That was beautiful. Beautiful. Such a, God, such a deep spiritual call. Such a deep, deep call for us to let go and give ourselves away so that we can be used. But there is such a holding of fear of being consumed, being taken, such a contraction that ego tells us to hold on and don't let anyone take advantage of us, and all of this contracting, and I'll give you this if you give me that. And if you pay me, then I'll give you this, but I'm not working overtime. And now I don't like you because you're not giving me attention, so I'm going to do a half you-know-what job. Like all of the contract. And all Spirit says, give it away. Give yourself away. And when you give yourself away, you will find yourself. That's the miracle. You will never find yourself slicing and dicing and doling out parts. You will never find yourself doling out pieces of you, preserving the rest just in case. Just in case. That's not how Spirit works. Can you imagine? You do imagine this, but it doesn't work that way. I was going to say, can you imagine God working that way? And I'm like, well, you do. I mean, that's what the mind does. The mind imagines that God doles out. This is important. The mind imagines that God gives a little more to this one, and God withholds from that one, and God's going to punish that one. All this archaic, incorrect understanding of a spirit that gives itself away with no apologies, no need, no requirements. It doesn't keep score. God doesn't say, you didn't say your prayers last night, so I'm going to think about it. No matter how hard you are on yourself for the choices you made, God doesn't even live there. God doesn't live there. Take a breath on that, please. That was so beautiful, and that's such an invitation from Spirit. The nature of God is to give. And if you want to be like God, then give. Before I go to my lesson, I do want to make mention. Sometimes I pay attention to all of our suggestions, and sometimes you people give a suggestion. It's got a little bite to it. And the reason I know that is that you don't put your name on it, which is fine. I get it. I totally get it. But when one comes in that's important, I think, well, I'll address it. And it said just this: stop talking about money. And my answer to all of you is no way. No way. No way. No way. No way. We need too big of a healing in this area. It's not about that. It's about our pain around it. It's around learning how to give more and trust God more. And money is the primary symbol of our culture. So money holds the greatest sickness of our culture. Want to know what your fears are about giving yourself away? Put money in your hand. You want to know, you want to feel how little you trust God? Look at $1 left. I use money as a symbol because that is the symbol the culture uses. It would be silly for me to talk about rocks. You'd be like, why is he talking about rocks? I don't have a problem with rocks. And I would have to agree with you. I would say, I don't know why I'm talking about rocks. There's no point. Talk about money, there's a big point. So, I have fun with it. I joke about it. I get serious about it. Pray about it. But I won't stop talking about it. All right. So we are in a series, the 4 Agreements, fantastic way to begin the year. And our first agreement we studied a couple weeks ago is to be impeccable with your word. You can go to the next slide. Missed it. Go back. Sorry about that. There you go. First agreement is to be impeccable with your word. Please make sure to go back and listen to that if you weren't here. It's on our Facebook page. It really is about the place that our returning to our authenticity and aligning with our spirit begins with our thoughts and our words. And impeccability means as honest and clear as you can be. It also means kind. It also means to use words in a way that give life, that cause solution, that speak truth, that makes connection. See, this is the important part, you guys. If you speak truth, I'm giving you my truth, but it disconnects you from the other person, that's not the deepest truth. That's arguing. And it's getting it out, and I understand it, and I do it too. But impeccability of our word, when we really become interested in that as a pathway of spiritual awakening, then we have to pause as best we can. Will the speaking of my truth bring a connection of spirit? And if you don't know, then you pray. You pray to be given those words. That's the work of the first agreement. The second agreement is to not take anything personally. And we decided we all have that one down perfectly. So we didn't worry about that one. And the third agreement, which walks hand in hand, is don't make assumptions. So it's interesting. The first agreement is a positive authenticity, be impeccable, be this way, a positive note. The fourth agreement next week is a positive note. And the two in the middle, I mean, they're all positive, but the way they're phrased is interesting, because the second one is don't take things personally, don't do this. And the third one is don't make assumptions. I want to read a story to you. It's a little bit of a long story, but I like it, and I trust you will too. There's a story many years ago of an elementary school teacher. Her name was Mrs. Thompson. As she stood in front of her fifth grade class on the very first day of school, she told her students a lie. Like most teachers, she looked at her students and told them she loved them all the same. But that was impossible, because there in the front row, slumped in his seat, was a little boy named Teddy Stoddard. Mrs. Thompson had watched Teddy the year before and noticed that he didn't play well with other kids, that his clothes were messy, and that he constantly needed a bath. Teddy could be unpleasant. It had gotten to the point where Mrs. Thompson would actually take delight in marking his papers with big red pens and putting an F at the top. At the school where Mrs. Thompson taught, she was required to review each child's past records, and she put Teddy's off until the last. However, when she did review his files, she was surprised. Teddy's first grade school teacher wrote, "Teddy's a bright child with a ready laugh. He does his work neatly and has good manners. He's a joy to be around." His second grade teacher said, "Teddy's an excellent student, well liked by his classmates, but he's troubled because his mother has a terminal illness and life must be a struggle at home." The third grade teacher wrote, "His mother's death has been hard on him. He tries to do his best, but his father doesn't show up, and his home life will soon affect him if steps aren't taken." Fourth grade teacher, "Teddy's withdrawn, and he doesn't show much interest in school. He doesn't have many friends, and sometimes he sleeps in class." By now, Mrs. Thompson realized the problem, and she was ashamed of herself. She felt even worse when her student brought her Christmas presents wrapped in beautiful ribbon and bright paper, except for Teddy's. His present was clumsily wrapped in a heavy brown paper bag that he got at the grocery store. Mrs. Thompson took pains to open it in front of all the kids. Some of the children started to laugh when she found a rhinestone bracelet with stones missing and a bottle that was half full of perfume. But she stifled her children's laughter when she explained how beautiful the bracelet was, putting it on and dabbing some of the perfume on her wrist. Teddy Stoddard stayed after school that day, just long enough to say, "Mrs. Thompson, today you smelled just like my mom used to." After the children left, she cried. On that very day, she quit teaching reading, writing, and arithmetic, and instead, she began to teach children. Mrs. Thompson paid particular attention to Teddy as she worked with him, and his mind seemed to come alive. The more she encouraged him, the faster he responded. By the end of the year, Teddy had become one of the smartest children in the class, and despite her lie, became one of her teacher's pets. A year later, she found a note under the door from Teddy telling her that she was still the best teacher he'd ever had in his whole life. 6 years went by. She got another note from Teddy. He then wrote he had finished high school, third in his class, and she was still his best teacher in his whole life. 4 years after that, she got another letter saying that while things had been tough, sometimes he stayed in school and stuck with it and was soon graduating from college with the highest of honors, and she was absolutely the best teacher he had ever had in his life. 4 more years passed, and yet another letter came, this time explaining that after he got his bachelor's degree, he decided to go further. This letter had some extra letters after it inside Theodore F. Stoddard, M.D. But the story doesn't end there. You see, there was yet another letter that spring. Teddy said he met this girl and was going to be married. He explained that his father had passed away, and he was wondering if Mrs. Thompson might agree to sit in the place at the wedding that was usually reserved for the mother of the groom. Of course, Mrs. Thompson did, and guess what? She wore that bracelet, and she made sure that she was wearing the perfume that Teddy remembered his mother wearing on their last Christmas together. They hugged each other, and Dr. Teddy whispered in her ear, "Thank you so much for making me feel important and showing me that I could make a difference." And Mrs. Thompson said to him, "Teddy, you have it all wrong. You were the one that taught me that I could make a difference. I didn't even know how to teach until I met you." I know, Kleenex, right? Actually, I just need water. I practiced that twice last night so I didn't get the lump in my throat. So that story is a perfect story about making assumptions, isn't it? It's what we do. We make assumptions initially, first reaction to what we see, to what we smell, to what it looks like, if it's different than us. Any way that it's different or outside of what is familiar, we begin to make up stories. And they're fearful stories, but that's what the mind, the ego, does. And that is what traps all of us and disconnects us from the opportunity for our own spirit to expand and for us to be able to know more about life, discover more about people's paths in life, people's way in life, of which there is no wrong way. There is no wrong path in life. But when we let first initial response, and they do, I'm not making anybody wrong here. I think this agreement, don't make assumptions, even I'm like, yeah, right. Like that's just what happens. But I think the deeper invitation is to pay attention to the assumptions. When we tell ourselves don't do that, you know what happens. Don't think about a big pink elephant. You know what's going to happen. Don't make assumptions. That's a given. But the invitation is, what if I know that's what happens, but now I just want to pay attention to it and see where it's blocking my spirit. That's really the invitation that lives inside here. Don Miguel Ruiz says the whole world of control between humans is about making assumptions and taking things personally. Our whole dream of hell is based on that. You see, the mind has a I need to know problem, doesn't it? I need to know. I need to know what's going on. I need you to tell me what's happening. I know 70%, and that 30% had better be filled in by you, because if it's not, you darn well know I'll fill it in, and I'll make stuff up. That's what we do. We will make stuff up to fill in the pockets because we have this I need to know problem. It really plays out sometimes with the kids, right? With our partners, with our friends, with the close family members. I need to know. And I understand that the heart of that, but I do question the truth of it. This is what I believe. I believe if you had less of that I need to know, and you had a genuine loving curiosity, you'd get a lot more information. Like if information's what you're seeking, at least play the game differently. If you're strangling them, they can't talk. If you're holding their hands, it's open and at least they can't run away, right? So the more open you are with love, the more receiving you are. And so pay attention, because in the heart of this needing to control this agreement of making assumptions, there is a vice clasp that happens inside of us. And just like the other agreements, what it really does when we're living outside the agreement, when we are making assumptions, is we disconnect. We push people away, we disconnect from spirit, and we disconnect from each other. And that's the pain body. That's the healing that we're trying to have around this. So one of the ways is, I want to get to this too. You can show the next slide. We know what assuming does, right? So we all get that. And that makes sense. Our assumptions do one thing. They prove our false beliefs. That's what our assumptions do. They prove the beliefs that we're living inside of us that aren't true, but they keep fighting to prove themselves. And whenever there's that opening, they will go in there and you will fill in the spaces with the false beliefs that you hold. Very seldom do we make assumptions from the positive. We do sometimes, and we try to, so I'm not making that wrong. But mostly pay attention. The real assumptions that get us are the ones that are from fear, that something bad is going to happen. The invitation is to notice it and then flip it over. Get what's called above the line. Below the line is fear. Above the line is love. And how would love be in relationship to what's happening? It would become curious. It would ask the question, do I need to know this really? It would ask the question, or it would stand in the truth of, how about this? I trust Spirit so fully that I have all the information I need to know all the time. And if I don't have the information, then I must not need to know it. Trying that on, the mind might start fighting with me. That's okay. Try it on from a perspective of, what if I just became curious? What if I became willing to build the muscle of waiting? To just not know. That's the stretch, and that's the opening for Spirit. I don't know everything here, and I'm not going to make anything up. I'm just going to see if it's okay to be there. And then we get to dive into ourselves, which is what all these agreements are about, and begin challenging our own thoughts. We get to begin looking at ourselves to discover where the actual problem is. And when you dive into yourself, and that is spiritual practice, by the way, my friends. I was thinking about that this morning. I was like, the new spirituality today, when I was a kid, the spirituality was go to church, listen to some good stories, get a sprinkle of love, and then go home and keep doing what you were doing. Right? And that's what I saw. That's what I saw. There wasn't much motivation for change, and they sure weren't telling the truth. No one was telling the truth unless there was a full-on breakdown, and then you had to. But otherwise, it was just sort of a community hangout. And I had a great church. We had a fun community hangout. I can't remember one word the priest said. I think I checked out every single Sunday. I don't know. But I loved the music and the community part, so there was fun to be had. But it wasn't spiritual psychology. It wasn't the message of, you are the creator of your world. And every Bible story is pointing you to an inner revelation and an inner journey. Every journey is your inner journey. That's what the spirituality is today. Today it pushes us. Today it says, sweetheart, you're the problem. And when you accept that, you'll also discover, sweetheart, that you're the solution. So that's the great news. The great news, the old paradigm was push all the problems out and blame everybody else. But then, in order to fix that, you had to find the solution out there. External problem, external solution never worked. It hasn't worked for centuries upon centuries upon centuries. Today, there's a higher consciousness. We are in a higher consciousness, which is look within. Look where it's all being generated within ourselves. That's what these agreements are inviting us to do. And one of the best teachers on the planet today to help us do this, and I speak about her periodically, and I speak about her every year on this particular week, her name is Byron Katie. Byron Katie is a woman who was not enlightened. She was a smoker, drinker, gambler, eater, consumer, and angry person that nobody wanted to be around. So much so that she landed in a treatment center, a 12-step treatment center, to try and save her life. And as she tells the story, she felt so lowly about herself, very dramatic. Addicts are dramatic, if you didn't know. She only would sleep on the floor because she wasn't worthy of the bed. So she was sleeping on the floor. And one morning she woke up and she saw a cockroach or something on her foot. And in that moment, instead of jumping in, which I would have done or you might have done, she had a full spiritual awakening. She became one with the cockroach, one with everything, one with the walls. There was no past, there was no future, there were no walls blocking anything. Everything was connected, and where did it begin? With her. She saw the beautiful matrix of God that is here that your human eyes will never find. She had a revelation of what is actually happening. And out of that revelation came something that Spirit created through her as she gave herself fully to this, called the work. And the work is a brilliant thing that helps you test your assumptions. 4 simple questions. Number 1, is it true? That's a good first question. And you may be like, absolutely. Great. No problem. That person's a jerk. Is it true? Yep. Got it. Number 2, is it absolutely true? Now I've got to pause and ask myself, is that person absolutely a jerk every single moment of their life, including when they're sleeping? I don't think I could say yes to that, but part of us would like to try. So I'm going to say no to that. Doesn't matter, by the way, whether you answer yes or no. It doesn't matter. It's just locating where you are. Where you are. So I would say that answer, no, it's not absolutely true, but it's 98% true, but not absolutely true. Next question, and this is so important, and listen to the phrasing. How do you feel when that thought has you? That's all that's happening. You're probably sitting home alone in your kitchen thinking about them. They're not even there. They're not even there, and you're having thoughts about what a jerk they are. And what's happening? Great question. What's happening to me when the thought has me? We talked about that last week. What happens to me? I feel contracted. I feel angry. I want to fight. I want to push away. I'm unhappy. That's what happens to me. Good insight. It's just a question. What happens to you when the thought comes some kind of assumption has you? Check it out. And then the next question is the invitation. How would you feel if you were free of that thought? How would you feel if that thought didn't even exist? If I never had the thought, that person is a jerk, what would be happening? I'd feel free, I'd feel open, I'd feel expansive, I'd feel fine. Fine is a wonderful bar to begin at. I'd feel good. So do you get the difference? So the work takes us into the assumption, into the thought, and it gives it an inquiry, a simple inquiry to discover what's happening inside of you. And then the fifth opportunity is called the turnaround. And you simply turn it around to try on a different idea. So you take the thought that you went in with and you turn it around. That person is not a jerk. Could that be true? Yeah. Turn it around again. I'm a jerk. Could that be true? Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm not a jerk. Could that be true? Yes, that could be true too. So you try different ways to look at it, and the revelation comes, the real revelation, get this, I hope you're still with me, is when you realize what you've been calling them is what has been living inside of you. I don't want to admit that I'm a jerk, but obviously if I'm seeing them, I am them. And the moment I can just allow that, the real healing begins. So I'm kind of slamming two teachings together, the 4 agreements and the teaching of the work, but they can really walk hand in hand on the second and the third step. This can be a simple practice. And by the way, there's everything on YouTube. Just Google, just write in Byron Katie, you'll have all kinds of teachings. You'll have hours of training, of simple ways to learn how to do a practice. This is what's interesting to me because this is spiritual to me. This is spiritual practice. I would put this along with prayer, meditation, forgiveness, contribution, and the work. Something that makes the mind keep unraveling. That's what we're looking for. Because when your mind is unraveled from all the assumptions, and when your mind is unraveled from taking it personally, you have a mind that Spirit can use. And you will begin giving yourself away in the most beautiful ways. So the last point around this assumption, why am I keep blanking on it? Don't make assumptions. We've talked about this before, it came up during Advent. But there are 3 words that can really carry you, and you can say them as a mantra. Let it be. Just let it be. And the inside goes, wah! Just let it be. Just don't do anything in this moment. Let it be. And what that means is allow God. Allow it to be, and because your eyes do not see. That's a fun little rhyme. Let it be, because your eyes don't actually see what's happening. Just let it be. And when you see things happening in the grocery store, on the street, when something's happening on the news, if you're watching TV, can you imagine in this very divided culture that needs our prayers, if you were just like, I'm just going to let that opinion, I'm just going to let it be. Let it be. By the way, I truly enjoy watching all perspectives on this political thing. For my point, just for me, and not making any stand whatsoever, because this is where I land. They're all saying the same thing. They're all doing the same thing. It's one thing that they're all trapped in. I begin to see the pattern that they're all trapped in. And I have compassion, and I enjoy that. I can hold the space to do that. And if I ever find myself going down the rabbit hole of judgment, I turn it off. I turn it off because my mind can't be used well there. My heart can't be used by God well when I'm finding myself positioned and cornered. But it can when I'm in the open and allowing. So we let it be, yes? Let's go over our new truths. We had 4 truths. Now we have 3 assumptions to live by. Say these with me, please. I assume I am created in the image and likeness of God, and that assumption is correct. Number 2 assumption. I assume I am powerful creator. I have within me all the forces of the universe, and that assumption is correct. And the third one, I assume I am love, and that assumption is correct. Yes, good work. Let's move into prayer, friends. Take a nice deep breath. You good? I'm going to invite our prayer chaplains and ministers to stand. They hold the space for the prayer. As I tell you every week, these are your prayer chaplains. They've studied hard to be of service to you. Take a nice deep breath. Open your hands and turn within. Breathe.
When I find myself in times of trouble, Mother Mary comes to me, speaking words of wisdom, let it be. And in my hour of darkness, she's standing right in front of me, speaking words of wisdom, let it be. Let it be, let it be, let it be, let it be. Whisper words of wisdom, let it be.
And in this moment, I whisper the words of wisdom, which are the name of God. God as that perfect life, that perfect presence, connecting all, filling every opening up with its love. Only assuming love, only giving love, only generously giving and letting it be. And the peace that is found is undeniable. The opening of the heart that happens is magnificent. And this is the prayer that I speak for us today. I ask the Holy Spirit to help us live these three words, especially this week. Let it be. Everywhere an assumption arises, everywhere we want to make something up, everywhere we are triggered or we begin to take something personally, Holy Spirit, give us the words. Keep them fresh before us. Let it be. Let it be. Help us to leave it alone. Help us to see the magnificent life that's behind it. And help me only to move if it be thy will. If it be thy words, if it move from love, Holy Spirit, then move me in that direction. Holy Spirit, increase our ability to wait. Increase our ability to hold space, to hold allowing for the grace of God to be revealed. Holy Spirit, let us be the ones that's done making things up just to fill in the blanks. Holy Spirit, let us be the space holder and the channel and the vessel for your love to fill in the spaces. Holy Spirit, help us, let it be.
Let it be.
Sing along.
Let it be. Let it be. Let it be. Whisper words of wisdom, let it be.
Sing it again.
Let it be. Let it be. Let it be. Let it be.
Whisper words of wisdom, let it be. Now just you. Let it be.
Let it be. Let it be. Let it be. Whisper words of wisdom, let it be.
Isn't that beautiful? That's just gorgeous. Thank you, sweet Spirit. Thank you, sweet Spirit. We let it be. And so it is. Amen. Amen. Jesse.